X marathon, cleaning out my folder.
3 days ago, my last living grandparent, my mother's father, passed away at the age of 89. He was a World War II vet. My mom tells me that after returning home from the Navy, he was never quite the same. In fact, he was pretty paranoid about nearly everything. I was never really allowed to stay at his house. In 1965, his wife suddenly died, with no real explanation. My mother tells me that my grandfather became extremely fearful of a nuclear war with the communists, and that he started to dig a bomb shelter out of the rock and limestone on his land. I never saw the bomb shelter until today, when the family was going through my grandfather's belongings. Pick related, it's the entrance. I had only ever asked my grandfather about this hand-dug cave one time in my life, which was when I was about 16 or so, when we got together for Christmas. He didn't really seem to want to talk about it. He just told me not to go there because it's just a damned... What word in the blank was, I was never able to figure out. No amount of Googling helped me determine what he said. All I know is it sounded like Silks air. The way he said it was creepy enough that I never asked about it again. This picture is a view back towards the door after you go down some steps. I hadn't even thought about the shelter since then until today, when my mother asked me to go and check it out and see if I could find anything worth putting into the estate sale. To be honest, I was pretty excited. I thought maybe I'd find old gas masks, non-perishable food items from the 60s, maybe even some forms of entertainment that he had planned to use to keep the family busy in the event of an attack. This picture is the first hallway, which curves off to the right at the end. The first thing I found was this rudimentary toilet. Of course, time wasn't kind to it, so there wasn't much left. It had obviously been in disrepair for years. I just snapped a picture of it and kept going. Although, I did have to admire the work that had to have gone into chipping away at the rock, one heave at a time. But further down the hallway, I came to nothing more than just a bunch of old rusted garbage on the floor. I instantly felt my heart sink, because I had such high hopes for what this exploration would yield. It was beginning to look like my grandfather had just given up at some point on his dream of crafting a shelter. Pick related as garbage. But, you'll notice that in the previous picture, the hallway curves off to the left. I was expecting to hit a flat wall of rock, but instead, I found a huge iron door that was padlocked shut. Fortunately for me, it had become rusted to all hell, so I was actually able to just pick up a decent-sized rock off the floor and hit the padlock until it busted the entire loop that it went through. Opening the door was another story, though. It was extremely heavy, and had become rusted shut over the years. I found a shovel back in the garbage heap and used all my strength to force it open with a lever action. Pick related. It's the view after I got the damn thing open. The only thing back here was a hallway that did abruptly end where he had stopped digging. But there was a doorway off to the right. I went through the doorway, and inside this room looked more like a cavern than a bomb shelter. As I looked around, I noticed this fucking carving in the stone. At first I thought, oh, no big deal, maybe he just came back here to pray or something. And that's when I started to notice that there were more carvings. Suddenly, I see this face carved in the rock. There are faces everywhere. Seriously, it was as though there were a bunch of ghostly faces staring you down. And here's another example. I noticed that while the previous one appeared to be a soft female face, this one was an angry male face. And there were really quite a few of them. I don't know, probably 6 or 7. They were carved into the walls as though they were facing that cross-carving, worshipping it or something. I happened to look down at the ground below the skull carving, and there, sitting in a bunch of concrete rubble, was a motherfucking bone. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just a fucking Nancy. This was no deer bone, this was clearly a human bone. My heart was pounding out of my chest. As I started to look more closely, I saw more bones coming out of the concrete, as though human remains had been dumped in a batch of quick-dry cement or something. Then, I could have sworn I heard a quiet laugh from the corner of that room. And I fucking bolted. I ran out of that room like the devil was chasing me. I ran all the way out of the shelter, all the way back to the house. And then I saw this one. Unlike every single other carving in this room, which were faces, this one was clearly meant to be a skull. It seemed so out of place, since I felt that the rest of the room had religious connotations to it. Why was there a skull? Well, I found out soon enough. An ossuary is a chest, building, well, or site made to serve as the final resting place of human skeletal remains. I wouldn't pronounce it as Al-Sixer, but it could plausibly be pronounced something like that in some accents and dialects of English. Quake 3 bots were designed based off an artificial neural network. They would effectively think to figure out the best way to do things. They would see which tactics worked and which didn't, reusing the ones that worked and disregarding the ones that didn't. The longer they played, the more they would learn about you, figuring out your patterns, and this would apply towards other bots as well. For all intents and purposes, they were one of the first learning AI in a game. When I found this out, I set up a Quake 3 Arena server on my pirating server, just to have 16 bots face each other over and over to see how good they would get. I set the server up 4 years ago. It's been running the entire time. I forgot about it until this thread. I'm gonna go check on them. I just checked on them, but for some reason, all the bots are just standing still. I'm gonna try changing the map. It was cycling through maps automatically, but I guess it got stuck or something. Could make sense. I'm not fully buying into this, but if what you said is true, the only winning move logically for them is not to play. Maybe they have learned that the best technique to survive is to make peace and to stand there for eternity, waiting for a purpose or salvation. They know when to fight and run, such as low health or weapons that can't win the situation for them. I just changed the map and they keep standing still. I have a program that tracks player movements on the server and they're literally just standing there. I'm gonna download Quake 3 Arena and see if they turn back on when I get back on the server. Give me a few minutes. The ultimate survival strategy developed over 4 years. Nobody dies if nobody kills. They've achieved something we couldn't. World peace. Okay, that was pretty fucking weird. I joined the server and the bots still just stood there. But the fucked up thing was they would rotate to look at me. I walked around a little bit and they just all kept looking at me. So I grabbed a railgun and fragged one of them. They all ran for the nearest weapons, took me down, and the server crashed. Well, I don't really know what to say about this. It was a teamless deathmatch server, which made it all the weirder when they didn't attack each other and went straight for me. Oh god. I just checked the AI logs. Each bot has a separate one. They're each 512 megabits. They're not those kind of logs. They're tactical logs based on what has worked and what hasn't worked in battle. For all intents and purposes, they're memories. Man, it's 512 megabits per bot. 16 bots. It's 8 gigabits of information. The semi-sentient fucker should be glad I haven't decided to delete them for taking up space on my hard drive. Gillespie cornfield, outside of Perry. Every Halloween, go on a long ride with my friends from high school to Gillespie Field. There is a path through the corn, wide enough for perhaps a tractor, that led to a large circle. Not quite like a crop circle, but it sure gave off that sort of vibe. B-17, Halloween 2010. Lots of Marine friends and Hunter friends this year. Friends of friends this year. Huge ass fucking party. We eventually had to start pulling the cars out of the circle because it was getting to be too crowded with 6 cars worth of people. It's getting to be 2 in the morning. People starting to drift out. About 20 people left in all. One of them called me over to get some beer. At age 17, you can imagine I was pretty thrilled to be allowed in on the older kids' games and all that. There's this super hot chick, Tina, Trina, I don't remember, who was all over me, drunk as a fish in a whiskey barrel, but all over me. Too shy to initiate anything, but I did get to see her boobs because she took off her top. Dwindled down to 10 or so people, me, 5 Hunter friends, 3 Marine friends, and 2 civilians, not including me. One of them suggested a bonfire, drunkenly. 10 minutes later there's a huge fire pit going, and we're dancing around it pretending to be Native Americans doing a ritual, laughing and having a good-ass time. NBD, right? Hush washes over everyone. We all got the same rush of sudden unease and anxiety. Everybody freezes, more or less in the positions we've been dancing in. Goofy as shit, but nobody dares to make a sound. Only sounds are the sounds of the giant fire in the pit. Standing around for almost a minute before somebody whispers, "What happened to all the crickets and shit?" No wind, no crickets, no birds, no nothing. We stop dancing, thoroughly put off, and my buddy Joseph, a hunter, goes, "Guys, I'm gonna go get my rifle." Murmur of agreement. The other hunters break off to go with Joseph and grab their shit, mostly pistols and knives besides Joe. Marine buddies, Kate, Samuel, and Ed, sit down in what I can roughly describe as a perimeter sort of thing, around me and the other no-training folks. At this point, we're too nervous and anxious to talk. We're barely breathing. There's not a noise, just the fire pit's crackling and a slight rustle in the corn. Starting to get a little disconcerting. We sort of stuck close together, kept wide, worried eyes on the stalks. Kate says something's not right. Mutual agreement, but nobody can put a finger on it. Ed sucks in a breath and everybody jumps a bit, looks over at him. If the wind is gone, what the fuck is making the corn stalks rustle? Swear to God, I nearly pissed myself right there. We're all about 5 seconds, and a sneeze away from needing a change of clothes when Joe comes back. White as a sheet. Alone. Joe's pulling the bolt back on his rifle and sprinting back to the campfire circle. Tosses his pistol to Ed. "Joe, what the fuck happened? It looked like you saw Sam's mom." Joe sort of glares at Ed and then hisses, "Don't you fucking joke right now. There's something in the corn." Lot of disbelief going around. There's something in the corn. I'm not fucking around. Now see, around there we're used to big dogs, large cows, even the occasional oversized cat. So everybody sort of gave Joe this slanty eye, "The fuck are you saying?" sort of look, like he's trying to freak everybody out. We keep trying to get him to tell us where the others are. What happened to the other 4 he went off with? Says they stayed at the cars to protect them. Rustling in the corn. Joe immediately wheels and takes a shot. Right next to my fucking ear. Immediately feelings of fear and anxiety intensify. Some sort of low, whimpering sound is coming out of the corn now. Joe is gibbering like a fucking drunk, muttering incoherently. I'm about to take the rifle from him when I notice that he's got some sort of black slime smeared on his pant leg. Then I nearly shit myself again. Because what crawled out of the corn was not a dog. Not in the strictest sense, I guess. It was shambling sort of awkwardly, with what looked like a broken leg, maybe a dislocated shoulder. It looked like it had, at some point in time, been some sort of hound dog, a black or dark brown bloodhound. There was chicken wire wound around its neck like a noose. It was coated in flies. There was black sludge dripping from its jowls and oozing out of a bullet hole near its right eye, which was itself drooling the same black crap like tears. Joe lost his fucking mind at this point. Sam and I had to wrestle the rifle away from him. No more green text. It's hard for me to keep up. This shit still gives me the shakes. It kept shambling out of the corn towards us, wheezing and spitting that black shit into the ground. The flies, numerous enough that I could almost hear them buzzing from across the clearing. Joe was losing his fucking mind. Collapsed on the ground, was trying to go fetal as me and my marine friends tried to haul him away. The dog just kept walking. As it kept coming, it dragged something else out of the corn behind it. Attached to the chicken wire wound around its neck. It took a second for me to piece it together in the light of the fire. But attached to the end of this morbid fucking umbilical cord was a beating heart. Like a bear-sized, still beating, leaking heart. Thumping away and leaking that black sludge shit. The flies were having a field day with it. The dog had no eyes for us. It was staring directly at the fire, like it was mesmerized or something. It dragged itself off-kilter towards the fire, wheezing and spitting and sobbing, the heart beating excitedly on the chicken wire behind it. Its back legs were mangled, and it sort of dragged itself along on its front legs and one back leg. The weird thing is, as it got closer to us, I swear to God, I thought I could hear some sort of words every time the dog wheezed and whimpered and cried. I didn't stick around to listen. Nobody else did either. We grabbed Joe and ran back to where the path to the cars was, making a wide berth around the dog and its cargo. Before I left, I had to watch. Pretty sure the others had the same feeling because they weren't very far ahead of me when the show was over. I stopped and watched as it dragged itself, heaving and coughing, closer to the fire. The flies didn't even veer away when it stuck its head in the fire. It burned like someone had tossed a tire in there. It stunk something fierce. I just had to watch, because the dog didn't stop moving when it had been engulfed by the pit. The chicken wire kept moving, dragging the heart into the flames after the dog until they were both gone. And the only way anybody could have known it was there was the trail of black sludge on the ground and the smell of burning rubber. We were halfway home when I finally looked over at Joe. There was something that had been bothering me since the thing had gotten close enough for us to really hear it. I asked Joe what it had said to him, because I was almost positive that was why he was so fucking freaked out. It had been next to him in the corn, and he'd heard it speaking to him. At first I thought maybe I was wrong, because he gave me this weirded out glare, and he wouldn't say anything. Then he took a deep breath, and he leaned over to me, and he whispered this sentence in my ear. "Come with me." I'll bring you home. For a second, I felt very cold. Because that was what I heard too. What I think I saw that night was Beelzebub. And I'm not a noob, so I know that Beelzebub is not the devil. Not in the actual rhetoric. He's the Lord of the Flies. I don't know why he appeared to us that night. What he wanted or what brought him there. I don't even know if what we saw really was a demon. Maybe it was just something in the corn. There's lots of stuff in the corn nobody really wants to talk about. At any rate, I moved out of Iowa, so I don't have to worry about the corn or what I saw. I should probably try to reconnect with my friends, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I'll find out that Joe died in a fire or slit his own wrist. Sometimes I have nightmares about it, and I think maybe Joe does too. Which is why I'm afraid that I'll find he lit himself on fire. I keep a matchbook under my pillow, because sometimes I kind of want to do it. Just to see what it would be like. Married. Wife's sister is married too. Her and her husband have a 12-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl. Girl is playing in backyard with her brother. Brother goes inside to get them drinks. Sister vanishes by the time he comes back outside. Family goes nuts. She is missing for 2 days. Spend 2 sleepless days helping them search for her in the woods and fields behind their house. Suddenly shows up outside the house. Wife happened to be there at the time. Calls everyone to get them home. Her family takes her to the ER. Filthy. Stinks. A little weak, but otherwise okay. She doesn't remember where she was. Bring her home after a couple days. Of course, her family clings to her the next week or so. Eventually, things go more or less back to normal. Girl is a little off, though. Very clingy to her mom. No one really pays attention, figuring she's just upset after all that happens. After about 4 weeks of her being back, her mom collapses on her way to work. They take her to the ER. Doctors say she is extremely fatigued. She said everything was pretty normal. She slept a lot and ate right. Spends a night in the hospital and is released. Collapses again, this time at work. Spends more time in the hospital. Doctor says she might need to take some time off work. She agrees. Her and her husband decide to take a vacation. Ask if we could keep the kids for a couple weeks while they're away. Of course. Her mom is really reluctant to leave the girl. Not surprising given what happened. Kind of weird about it, though. In tears as they are dropping them off with us. Just over the girl, though. The boy is already upstairs playing Xbox. They don't think much of it. Couple days pass. Girl's a little strange. Doesn't want to play games with us or watch movies with her brother. Just kinda hangs out with my wife. Not doing really anything, just sitting with her. Write it off, given what happened. Her mom is calling sometimes 10 times a day. Sometimes screaming and crying to talk to her. Brother-in-law apologizes for her bothering us all hours of the night. After a couple more days, brother-in-law calls. Says she is really sick, throwing up. Thinks she probably ate something bad and they'll likely cut the trip short and come home as soon as she is feeling a little better. Mentions they haven't done anything anyway because she just stays in the hotel room crying to go home to her daughter. Calls back the next day. Says she's felt a little better and they were going to go ahead and stay until their original flight home. Late in the second week with the kids, wife is coming in from the garden, staggers a little, falls to her knee, made sure she was alright and asked if she wanted to go to the doctor or something. She said she just felt a little lightheaded and was fine. Insists she spends some time in bed. Little girl wants to sit in the bedroom with her. Explains she isn't feeling well and needs some rest. Kid is rather hateful about it. Whatever. Made the little shit spend the night downstairs watching cartoons and shit with her brother and I. Wife slept for hours. Wife spends the rest of the week not feeling so great, always a little dizzy. Brother and sister-in-law finally come home, pick up their kids. Happy to see them go. Wife cries. It's not like we can't see them whenever we want. She is really weird about it. Spends most of the night crying. Next day, wife is insane. Wants to call off work and go to her sister's house. Totally not like her. Things get to the point I physically restrain her to keep her from going over there. Tell her she's been feeling crappy the last few days and needs to spend some more time relaxing. All evening and night we fight and bicker about it. Next day she wakes up. She wants to call off again. If you feel good enough to go over there, why don't you just go to work and then visit them on the way home? She agrees. We go to work. We work in the same building. She ends up getting sick and throws up. We go home together. She is shaking and can't keep anything down. We go to the hospital. Doctor says she is showing symptoms of withdrawal and asked if she drank heavily. Never drank before. They drug test her. Nothing. She has a really rough night. Feels a lot better the next day. Wife's sister gets sick again. Collapses one evening after work. Hit her head on the edge of the kitchen table. Spent several days in the hospital. Little boy wakes his dad up one night while she's in the hospital. Said the little girl got out of bed and went downstairs. Brother-in-law freaks out and begins searching for her. She's laying in the yard, freezing. He immediately takes her to the ER. She spends a couple of days in the hospital with her mom. Eats like a moose. Perks right up after a couple days. Vaguely remembers the past month or so. Acts totally normal from then on. Her mom stops getting sick. Wife is around her without getting sick. She plays games with me and her brother when they're over. I don't think it was their daughter that came back the first time. I wouldn't venture to guess what it was, but it did something to her mom and my wife while it was around them. Made them sick, weak, and created some sort of dependence on it. Scares the hell out of me.